Alcohol and drug use can become unmanageable in teens and young adults, often with far-reaching consequences. Next, learn about some innovative programs and meet some success stories on Speak Your Mind. Welcome to Speak Your Mind. I'm Dr. Carolyn Phelps, licensed psychologist with the Human Development Center. Tonight we're taking your questions on substance abuse in teens and young adults. And as always, we depend on questions from you, the viewer, to help explore this issue. So call the numbers on your screen right now. Locally, dial 218-788-2844 or call toll-free at 1-877-307-8762. And you can also text us your questions or email them using the number and address listed at the bottom of your screen. We're going to start by introducing our guests. Benjamin Birch has served as the Recovery Services Coordinator at the College of St. Scholastica for the past 3 years. Active in the recovery movement since 2006, Ben's study of addiction and recovery has been a personal journey of discovery and understanding. Jake Lewis is in his final semester at the College of St. Scholastica, where he's also a member of the CLEAN program. Jake joins us to talk about his participation in that program and to share his own story of addiction and recovery. And Jane Larson, whom you may recognize from 2 weeks ago, is back. Why, you ask? Because she's the coordinator of prevention services with the Human Development Center's Douglas County office, where for the past 10 years she's run prevention and early intervention programs for youth. Thanks to all of you for being here this evening. And I think, Jake, a really nice place for us to start, since you were so graciously willing to come on television to tell your story. I think that would be a nice place to start, about your journey both into addiction and then also obviously into recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. My journey into addiction started really when I got to college. Started drinking a lot heavily there, and it quickly went downhill. I wasn't able to attend classes. I wasn't able to control the things that I wanted to, accomplish things that I wanted to get done. It took an intervention from my parents and to get me to kind of look at my addiction, and I went through a treatment program and thought that that was enough, and I had been cured and fixed. And it took me.
And I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. So you said that your real start into drinking and into addiction began in college, so really wasn't so much in high school. And if you take a look back in your own family, what was family life like?
Growing up, I had an amazing childhood. My parents are really involved, really loving and caring. Yeah, I mean, it was great. There wasn't much drinking in the family at all. Both alcoholism runs in our family, grandparents and things of that, but not in the immediate family.
And so that wasn't really a part of your experience, which I think sometimes people have the impression of, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It was tough for me to get over that in my own head, that how could I be an alcoholic if I didn't have this growing up, you know?
So you go through that first recovery program, and you think, I'm good to go?
Voila, I'm fixed. Not the case, though. You know, and it took a lot more consequences for me to get to the bottom, where I finally realized that I cannot do this anymore. I don't want to go on living like this. Yeah, it was miserable. It was very miserable.
And then did that involve a second turn into a second treatment program?
Correct, yes. Through the help of my parents and family, I found a place in St. Louis, Missouri, and I actually went down there and did a 28-day inpatient treatment. And then one of the things that I found out through my recovery is 28 days is really just kind of looking at the tip of the iceberg, and there's just so much more there. And so I took the advice of the people there and stayed in a kind of a halfway house sober living and worked my way through. And I spent actually 6 months in St. Louis before I was ready to move back to the Twin Cities, where friends and family were. And when I moved back, I moved into a sober house there as well, where there was kids my age, all sorts of different people, but with different backgrounds and different stories. But the one common thing is that we all had a problem with alcohol.
How much of a difference did it make that you were living also with people your age, do you think?
It was really helpful too. For me personally, I was 24, 25 when I started to have concerns for my parents, and there was no way I could be an alcoholic. I'm so young, and I'm in college, and it's just that kind of thing to do. And so seeing other people that were my age and being able to be involved with them and know that I'm not alone was very helpful, very helpful.
You were explaining that you go through that treatment the first time you think you're good to go, and it turns out you're not quite so good to go. Maybe not necessarily following recommendations, I'm guessing.
Definitely not following recommendations.
And that you had to experience a few more consequences. Are you willing to name some of those consequences?
Yeah. I got DUIs, I owed money to a lot of people, my landlord. I couldn't really hold jobs down. I would get jobs for a little bit, and then I'd either not show up because I was too drunk or I was too withdrawing and all those things. And it just, all these consequences started to just pile on and pile on and pile on. And, I'd kind of try to push it away, but it just got too hard to push it away.
Mm-hmm. In your life now?
It's amazing. It's amazing. I remember...
Name those things. I made you name the negative
things.
So now name the positive things.
I am about to graduate from the College of St. Scholastica. I have met a wonderful lady there. She's amazing. She's everything to me. We have a dog. I've got a good job that I've had for over 2 years now. I can drive legally. I have money in the bank, not a lot, but I have money. I'm not stealing. I'm not lying. I'm not trying to hide who I am. I can be comfortable with myself. I mean, it's amazing.
Being the man that you want to be.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we heard Jane about Jake's struggle into addiction really didn't begin into college. You work a lot, though, actually with even the younger crowd than that, teenagers, in some of the work that you do with early intervention and prevention. Tell us a little bit about that work and what's helpful with teenagers.
Well, the program that I'm working with is working with teens ages 12 to 19 who are beginning to experiment and are using and maybe having some negative consequences from their use of alcohol and drugs, but who aren't maybe to the point that you were with addiction and dependent on chemicals yet. So when I go in and work with the kids, we're trying to figure out where they are, what their patterns are. We explore pros and cons of using with them. And the goal always, we would like to, the long-term goal always of an intervention is abstinence, but that's long-term. So sometimes harm reduction is the early goal to start with in that process of moving toward abstinence. So we spend time working with the kids, helping to motivate them to be willing to make a change.
Explain a little bit about harm reduction, since the viewing audience may not be quite familiar with that.
Well, like Jake said, there's consequences that happen. Kids experience legal consequences. They're getting picked up maybe underage. They're losing their license. They have DUIs. They're having problems at school. They're having family problems, and so we work with harm reduction, which is meaning that we're trying to get them to use less. Anything that we can do to help reduce the harm, reduce the consequences, reduce their risk. And so for some kids, just to say stop wouldn't work for you, and it doesn't work for a lot of kids. And so we start looking at how can we get them to use less and have less consequences and less risks in their life.
What do you see, Ben, as some of the risk factors with maybe teens and also college students? You work mostly with college students at Scholastica. Some of the risk factors that you see for people developing alcohol and drug problems?
Well, I think what happened to me, and what happened to Jake is you start off using drugs and alcohol kind of to have a good time. It's kind of a social thing, and it's fun, and personally I had a lot of good times, but you get to a point where you quit using to feel abnormal or to get into a party state, and you begin to start using just to feel normal. Or somehow, when I started drinking at a young age, when I was intoxicated or when I was high, was when I would feel abnormal. but it got to a point where when I wasn't intoxicated or high was when I was really feeling abnormal, and the only time I felt comfortable or in control kind of was when I was under the influence. And so I think what happens is that with young kids, they begin to develop that mindset that it's, this is how you have fun, and you begin to condition your body that, if it doesn't involve getting drunk or getting high, it's not a good time.
One of the things I know, we're talking sort of about peer influences now as being a risk factor, right? And on a college campus where there's often the perception that what you do on college to have a good time is to party then. And so talk a little bit about what you see and what you know, Jake, from your own experiences, but also what you see now about those kind of influences.
Well, I think I have a unique perspective on that situation because I was enrolled as a typical college freshman and went through 3 or 4 years of school, and then due to my use of alcohol and drugs, I actually failed out, and long story. But anyway, and now being in college sober, it has this really unique perspective. And so when I was first in college, and it was definitely the thing to do. I mean, my parents dropped me off, and that within like 2 hours, I think I was drunk. And I mean, I didn't drink much in high school. And that was just the thing to do, and it seemed like the only thing to do. Whereas now, there's so much to do. I mean, we live in Duluth, which is a beautiful area. There's tons of outdoor stuff. There's other kids at school in the CLEAN program that you can spend time with and hang out with and develop real relationships instead of these kind of party, buddy, whatever, not so real friendships.
And I think that's a really good point that you just made, is that the quality of the relationship that you have with somebody who is, when you're high, and with somebody else who is high, there is the perception that is a deep and meaningful relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Until you're sober and you have this ability to kind of take a look at that from the outside. What do you see with the teenagers with that, Jane?
I think that's a lot of the same thing. When I'm working with kids, they talk about all of their using friends, and but then when they're struggling with hard times or things are going wrong for them, those friends aren't there for them. And when I'm working with them in the program, then they talk about how these friends that they felt were so close and that they could rely on and that they counted on and partied with really weren't the friends that they thought they were, and were only there for the good times and not really to help them and be friends in the rest of their life.
A caller from Duluth asks, is there a difference in developing drug problems between teens and young adults? Are there differences? What do you know about that? What can you say about that, Ben?
I don't want to come across as an expert on this at all, but I do attend a lot of conferences and try to stay up on the latest literature. And, I've been to a couple of presentations by some leading psychologists in this area, and simply put, the adolescent brain is programmed for pleasure, and it doesn't remember the significance of the consequences that it encounters, and or the resonance isn't there. So there could be a significant tragedy. They could wreck a car. They could get a DWI. Even having parents upset with them, and that might have an effect for a day or two. But, again, they're going to be thinking about the good things that have happened, the fun that they had, and that's going to be attractive to them, and they're going to go back out and use because, again, it's just that the brain at that time is really programmed for pleasure.
And, I know that you people who were watching the Parenting Teenager show are nodding your head at home saying, yes, that's exactly what they talked about 2 weeks ago in the Parenting Teenager show, was how the teenagers are motivated by pleasure, not so much by consequences. And we know that the young adult brain and the teenage brain tends to be a little bit more impulsive as well.
Right. Risk-taking behavior is much higher in those teen years than they are as an adult, and they're not. This part of the brain, the frontal cortex of the brain, that is our ability to look forward and with foresight and think about consequences and weigh pros and cons, isn't really fully developed. And there's a risk also when kids are using at a young age of causing damage because it's not fully developed. So we see a lot of that happening.
Another caller from Duluth says, some parents drink with their teens to teach them how to drink. I'm going to teach, well, at least I can teach them how to drink. Is this an effective strategy? Jake, what do you have to say about that? Would you recommend parents do that?
Not being a parent, you can, I don't know, I think you can teach responsibility and certain things, but when it comes to drinking with your teen, I don't know, because I think they're going to develop that allergy or that addiction regardless if you teach them or not. I thought I was going to learn to how to drink normally from my first treatment. I thought I could be taught how to drink normally. My parents, when we talked about drinking, never said, yeah, you should always overindulge and all this, and that was something I figured out on my own, how to do that very easily. So, I don't know. I don't know.
Ben, weigh in on this.
Well, it's interesting because my wife and I grew up in two totally different environments, and drinking was very much taboo. My parents never kept liquor in the house. There was never beer in the refrigerator. It was very much something that was frowned down upon. And my wife's side of the family, it was very much a cultural thing, and it wasn't. It was just part of the heritage. It was available. It was always available, and it's kind of ironic that I'm the person that ended up having a personal struggle with this, and whereas if you look at her and her brothers, that isn't an issue, and so it's. I believe that people are predisposed to a certain degree to have this problem. But I know that a lot of my drinking growing up was because I knew that it was frowned upon. When I drank hard because I didn't know when I would be able to have access to it again. But, this is an issue that my wife and I are going to be talking about as our kids mature. I don't think we're going to be having the approach of let's teach them how to drink responsibly. I just think you need to have the conversation about it.
Jane.
Well, I think having the conversation about it is really important. And research has shown us, it tells us that the earlier a child starts to drink and is allowed to drink, the greater likelihood they are going to have problems as adults with alcohol. So I would disagree, I guess, and say I wouldn't drink with my kids. I might talk to them about, I would be really clear about setting some limits and having some consequences and talking to them about when they're of age, and model responsible use of alcohol and drinking. But I would not drink with them and introduce it to them at an early age.
One of the things that came up in the conversation with my parents when they were talking about drinking, I remember, is that they always said, if you ever need a ride or, we won't be mad at you if you drank, please call us. And so that kind of conversation about responsibility and, that kind of thing. So I think, yes, what you guys have said, the conversation.
If I just make a final point on that, it's I remember being told something early on, and it was that I don't know how much control or influence I'll be able to have on my kids with regard to what they, to their drug and alcohol use. But I do know that I can model what responsible behavior is if they do have the same problems that I've had. And so if they are to a point where they've lost choice over what they do and how often they do it, that they can look at, a parent and say that this is someone that's moved forward with their life and is handling the addiction responsibly.
Well, and I think what we were talking about even 2 weeks ago on the Parenting Teens show is that concept of, number one, kids often are learn by modeling, and so that's about modeling a whole range of responsible behaviors, and whether that certainly what it might mean is that certain individuals may be more at risk for developing alcohol and drug problems, so that regardless of, in your case, Jake, you had excellent models for parents, that was not going to be a risk factor that we would check on your list, but you had other risk factors perhaps going on as well.
Mm-hmm. When we look at it, certainly there's a predisposition genetically that runs in families, but there's also environment. And, parents you may not have alcoholism in your family, so you don't have to worry about that. But what else is going on in the environment? What are the other stressors? What are what are our kids exposed to, and as parents, we're the first line of defense. We really are able to be the persons and sending a real clear message. We talked about disappointing your parents. That's a big one. 2/3 of kids, when you interview them on a national survey, said disappointing their parents is a big deal. So if parents never tell their kids what their expectations are, that doesn't help them.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
We have another question here. I'm now 252 days clean from methamphetamine. Awesome. So let's first say good for you, right? How long does it take to get meth out of your system?
I'm no expert. I think meth
go ahead.
could be out of your system for a while, but the mind games can go on for a while. I mean,
that's what I was just going to say. Let's change this question up a little bit, that there is a difference between meth physically being out of your system and your brain being clear. And what I will say is that as psychologists, when we look to do psychological testing and see the effect of drugs and alcohol on people, we like to have 6 minimum. We prefer 9 months free and clear. And so what does that tell us? That tells us that it takes at least that long for it to really get out of your brain. But I think the bigger issue is what you just said, which is there's a difference between having the drug out of your system. And that's what you were telling us when you said, oh, I thought I was good to go after that first recovery treatment experience.
For me, at least, I had to, I'd spent 8 years of very, very heavy drinking and drug use. I needed to redo everything how I lived my life. I needed to try to be a better person, try to be more honest, and all these things. And like my natural instinct is to lie or to get what I want and to feed myself. And so I kind of had to change. I had to change all of that, and so that's what really takes the long process, I think.
I want you to talk a little bit about the CLEAN program and tell the audience about what is the CLEAN program and what's going on at Scholastica with that.
Yeah, the College of St. Scholastica, we have a recovery services program, and this is simply a way of supporting the collegiate recovery community. And this is for anybody that is in recovery. And we have we facilitate 12-step meetings, both those that are kind of affiliated with NA and AA, and then but more so we have some that aren't, and those have a little bit different format. We use a little bit different discussion forums. But we also have what's called the CLEAN program, and that is our leadership development program. That is for our students that are looking to kind of grow in responsibility and prepare themselves for a peer-to-peer recovery support opportunity. And finally, we have a sober living community on campus, which provides students from not just St. Scholastica, but from the surrounding colleges an opportunity to live in community with other people in recovery.
And you've been involved in the CLEAN program.
Yes.
For how long?
2 years. 2 years.
And tell me what your experience has been with that and what that's done for you.
Oh, it's amazing. It's like Ben was saying with that peer-to-peer, knowing that I'm not alone in school, knowing that there's people going through similar struggles with me, having that support to go off and to, like I said, I'm going to be graduating soon, which is something I never had given up on. I never thought I was going to graduate from college, and so it's really taught me a more solid way of living life, trying to achieve these goals and being able to do that, and it's the people that are involved in the program that allow me to do that.
What I love about the concept of this program is that it puts people in connection with each other who, from my point of view, as I think about a young adult coming onto campus, maybe in recovery, who doesn't know a lot of other people and is taking a look at that environment from the outside, not knowing what the resources are, and what a scary proposition that would be.
It would be very frightening. It is. I think dealing with an addiction is a difficult process anyway, but to go into it and not know that there are other people there to support you. Support is huge for anybody who's in recovery from any sort of drug and alcohol problem, and without I think without that, people don't recover as quickly as they could if they have the support of peers and family and others in the community.
If there was something that you wanted to leave the audience with, Jake, what would that be?
There's always hope. There's people out there that are going through the same thing you are, and it's a phone call away. I don't know if there's a resource, a website, or anything like that we can leave with the CLEAN program, but I can give you my cell phone number. But there's always hope.
We won't be putting Jake's cell phone number on my blog, but we will be putting the resources that they have on my blog. Some last words you would like to leave with the audience?
Just to resonate what Jake said, never give up hope. It's no matter how many times you felt like you've had to start over or take another stab or wake up again and say, I'm not going to do what I did, I'm not going to do it again. You can always start this thing over. You can always hit reset. And there's a community that's going to help you do it. It's just reaching out and asking for help. That's the hardest part.
Yeah. And Jane?
I think what I would like to say echoes a lot of what they say, that to not give up and know that there is help, and it doesn't mean that you will change immediately or that you have to, but there are people who will help you take the small incremental steps you need to get to where you want to be with your life.
And I think you all heard it exactly what you needed to hear in terms of these are the important take-home messages. I don't need to repeat them. They said it better than what I could say. So thanks again to all of our guests for being here. Thanks to you viewers for tuning in. And don't forget to visit us on the web at speakyourmindonline.org, where we will have some of those resources about the CLEAN program, but not Jake's telephone number. You can also find a schedule of our topics and resource links and read my blog, the place where I answer more of your questions. And you can email us your questions about next week's show when we'll be talking about schizophrenia. I'm Dr. Carolyn Phelps. Thanks for watching and good night.